The Imperial fleet blotted out the stars. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Eric Vance stared at the tactical holosphere. Thousands of red markers, Imperial warships, crawled across the grid like a swarm of locusts. Their formation was pristine, each vessel aligned with mathematical precision. Two suns cast a pale glow on their hulls, polished black with streaks of cobalt blue, the signature of a Zathrian war machine. Any other species might have trembled at the sight. Vance smirked. That's all they brought? Guess they haven't seen humans fight angry yet. The bridge crew chuckled nervously. Even in the face of annihilation, their captain's humor was unshaken. His voice carried a rough confidence, like someone who'd been outnumbered before and lived to tell the tale. Sir, we're looking at over 2,000 ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, even their Royal Guard vessels, said Kara Miles, the ship's executive officer. She stood to Vance's right, hands clasped tightly behind her back. Her posture was rigid, but her steel-gray eyes carried fire. Our fleet count is 200, maybe 250 if you include the refitted freighters. Statistically, we don't have... Don't finish that sentence, Vance interrupted with a grin. The moment we start talking about statistics, we've already lost. The Empire plays chess. We play poker. He leaned over the console, zooming in on the Imperial Vanguard. They don't know which card we're hiding. From the engineering pit below, Chief Riggs barked. Cards? We barely got shields at full strength. Half the fleet is held together with duct tape and prayers. Captain. Then make it work, Vance replied, his tone sharp but playful. And add a little extra duct tape for good luck. The crew laughed again, but the tension never truly lifted. They all knew the stakes. If Epsilon Eridani fell, Earth would be next, and humanity would be chained under Zathrian rule. Vance had seen what the Empire did to conquered worlds. Cultures erased, populations enslaved, history rewritten. His fingers hovered over the hollow display. A plan was already forming, dangerous, reckless, but undeniably human. The Resolute shuddered as the first Imperial scout ships swept into the system. Like silver darts, they shot past the asteroid belt, scanning and probing for resistance. Vance tilted his head toward Kara. Time for a warm welcome, he said. Fleet standing by for your signal, Kara confirmed. Send the Falcon Wing to the debris field. Passive sensors only. I want them cloaked behind the rock shadows until those scouts get close enough to taste. Kara hesitated. You're using the asteroid belt as a kill zone? Exactly. Hide a few frigates there, lure the scouts in, then turn them into scrap. Make it look like a chaotic ambush, not an organized strike. We want the Empire thinking we're panicking. They already think we're primitives, Kara said, her lips curling into a faint smirk. Might as well encourage them. The plan unfolded like clockwork. 10 Imperial scouts glided into belt, their sleek hulls scanning the surrounding rock. At first, nothing moved. The scouts split formation, chasing phantom signals. Then the asteroids exploded. Human frigates burst from the shadows, railguns blazing. A wall of tungsten slugs ripped through the nearest scout ship, tearing it open like a tin can. Another was caught in a crossfire missile fire, its hull breaking apart in a spray of molten metal. On the Resolute's bridge, the crew watched the carnage unfold with restrained glee. Direct hit on Scout 3. Riggs hooped. That one's done dancing. Scout 5 is down too, Kara reported, her voice even but eyes alight. Looks like the Falcon Wing had fun. Vance leaned back in his chair, smiling. That's the idea. Let them think we're playing dirty. We want Valak to underestimate us. Hours earlier, the Empire's ultimatum had been broadcast across every human channel. Surrender and serve, or be annihilated. Vance still remembered the recording. Valak's voice, icy, calculated, dripping with contempt, had echoed across the Terran Council chamber. Your kind is weak. You build ships of steel while we mold vessels of light. Kneel, or your sons will be extinguished. Earth's answer had been unanimous. No kneeling. No surrender. Status of the fleet? Vance asked, snapping back to present. 70% ready for full engagement, Kara said. The Defiance and Ironheart are lagging on repairs, but they'll catch up. Good. Because once Volek realizes we just punch holes in the scouts, he's going to come at us full force. Riggs groaned. And we're going to laugh about it, huh? Vance grinned, his teeth flashing under the pale bridge lights. Exactly. Nothing unnerves an arrogant bastard more than laughter from the people they're trying to crush. The bridge quieted for a moment as the crew prepared for the next wave. Vance glanced around at them, Kara with her focus calm, Riggs with his grease-streaked face, the junior officers trying to hide their nerves. He cleared his throat. Listen up, all of you. His voice filled the room. The Empire thinks they've got us figured out. They fought 1,000 wars, crushed 100 species, but none of those species were us. We're not perfect. Hell, we barely made it this far. But you know what we've got that they don't. A young officer murmured, "What's that, sir?" Stubbornness. Humor. The kind of insanity that makes us laugh when the odds say we shouldn't even try. So, when they come at us with their shiny warships, I want them to hear us laughing on every frequency. Let them know humanity doesn't bow. Not today. Not ever. A ripple of approval spread through the crew. Even Kara allowed herself a smile. The Resolute sensors pinged. "Captain," Kara said, "incoming transmissions. The main fleet's advancing. Estimated time to engagement, 2 hours." "Perfect," Vance replied. "Plenty of time for another round of poker." Kara tilted her head. "What's the next move?" Vance's eyes flicked to the holo display, where the Imperial formation tightened into a spearhead. He traced his finger across the grid, highlighting the gap between 2 enemy wings. "We bait them," he said. "Make them think we're retreating. Then we hit their flanks so hard they'll think the void itself is laughing at them." Minutes later, Vance stood at the forward viewport, watching the twin suns burn orange and white against a backdrop of deep space. The Imperial Armada was now a looming shadow, growing larger by the second. He felt a twinge of fear buried beneath layers of resolve. Fear was natural. It kept him sharp. But fear would never control him. "Captain," Kara said quietly, joining him, "do you really think we can win this?" He didn't look at her. "Win? Maybe. Maybe not. But I'll be damned if we don't make them regret underestimating us." The bridge lights dimmed as battle readiness protocols kicked in. Vance returned to his chair, his voice steady and commanding. "Signal the fleet. Time to show the Empire how humans greet their guests." As the orders rippled out, the crew erupted into motion. Engines roared to life across the human flotilla, weapons primed, shields humming. Vance allowed himself one last grin. Let's give Volek a reason to remember our laughter. Grand Strategist Kortej Volek stood at the heart of his flagship, Imperial Judgment, as the debris of his scout ships drifted across the tactical display. His amber eyes narrowed, reflecting the flickering holographic shards of destroyed Zathrian vessels. Around him, the bridge crew waited in silence, afraid to speak. Volek's voice, when it came, was calm and cold. 10 scouts, he said slowly, his deep, resonant tone carrying across the chamber. 10 ships reduced to wreckage by humans. A junior officer shifted uncomfortably. Grand strategist, perhaps the asteroid belt concealed mines or automated defenses. Perhaps, Volek cut in, turning his gaze on the officer. Or perhaps the apes are bolder than we believed. His mandibles twitched in a display of irritation. Either way, they have drawn blood. For that, they will be taught their place. The officer bowed his head. Yes, strategist. Volek studied the tactical map, watching as the Terran ships repositioned. They moved with irregular, unpredictable patterns, nothing like the disciplined formations of Imperial fleets. It looked chaotic, even sloppy, but he'd seen enough campaigns to know better. Chaos, in the hands of a clever opponent, was a weapon. On the Resolute, Captain Eric Vance leaned back in his command chair, staring at the enemy formation as if it were a puzzle waiting to be solved. He let the silence stretch, the low hum of the ship's systems the only sound. Then he grinned. "They're tightening formation," Kara reported. "Looks like they're prepping for a spearhead push." "Good," Vance replied. "That means they're scared of the dark." Kara raised an eyebrow. "The dark?" "The spaces between," Vance said, gesturing to the holo display. "They hate not knowing what's out there. So we'll make those spaces bite them." Back on Imperial judgment, Volek gave the order to advance. Deploy the vanguard, he commanded. Crush the first line of Terran defenses. I want their fleet commanders begging for mercy before the sun set on this system. Dozens of sleek Imperial warships surged forward, their engines glowing with cold, white light. To the Zathrians, this was not a battle but a performance of superiority. Volek's second-in-command, Admiral Sherelek, approached. Grand strategist, the humans' first strike may have been luck. Should we commit the Royal Guard now to ensure a swift victory? No, Volek said firmly. To bring the Royal Guard against these primitives would be insulting. We will teach them with conventional force first. A predator does not reveal its fangs until prey understands fear. Sherelek inclined her head. As you command. The first clash began on the edge of the debris field. Contact! Riggs shouted from the engineering station on the Resolute. Imperial ships inbound, fast and heavy. Ready our forward batteries. Vance ordered. Send the Falcon Wing to their right flank. Keep the Ironheart and Defiance back for the second wave. The human ships surged to life, their engines flaring blue against the void. Railguns and missile pods armed in sequence, their targeting systems locking onto the advancing spearhead. Fire when ready, Vance said calmly. A storm of projectiles erupted from the Terran fleet. Slugs streaked through a vacuum, guided by predictive AI, while torpedoes arced toward the Imperial vanguard. The first volley tore into the lead destroyer, its shields flaring bright before collapsing under the relentless barrage. On the Imperial side, the response was immediate and brutal. Plasma lances fired back, cutting through the void with searing precision. A Terran frigate Nomad took a direct hit and broke apart, its shattered hull spinning into the black. They hit the Nomad, Kara called out, her voice clipped but steady. Vance's expression hardened. Pull the Ironheart forward to cover their gap, and get the Nomad's escape pods. No one gets left behind. Even amid chaos, he refused to lose sight of what mattered. It was one of the reasons his crew would follow him anywhere. Volek watched the skirmish unfold, his claws drumming against the command rail. These humans, he muttered. They waste lives like water yet strike with remarkable precision. How do they do this with such crude technology? Perhaps they adapt faster than predicted. Sherelek suggested carefully. Volek's mandibles twitched again. Adaptation is not strength. It is desperation dressed as courage. We will break them with the weight of the Empire's order. He gave a sharp gesture. Deploy the Ravager Squadron. Sweep their left flank and burn any ship that resists. Back on the Resolute, Vance caught the movement of Imperial reinforcements. They're splitting, Kara said. They're coming for our left side. Vance's grin widened. Perfect. Time for a little surprise. He keyed the comm to the fleet. Falcon Wing now. From behind a cluster of asteroids, a dozen Terran gunships burst forth, their engines flaring like sparks. They'd been hiding, silent and waiting, their sudden assault raked across the Imperial flank, catching the enemy completely off guard. One Imperial cruiser erupted in flame as a railgun slug pierced its reactor core. Another was shredded by a combined missile strike, the explosion lighting up the void like fireworks. The comms lit up with Terran laughter, raw, unrestrained, and defiant. On the Imperial judgment, Volek's expression soured. They are laughing, he hissed. Mocking us in open channels? Yes, strategist, an officer confirmed nervously. Fools, Volek snarled. Their bravado will be their undoing. But he paused, his gaze fixed on the tactical feed. They are not fighting like prey. They are fighting like predators. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. The skirmish lasted an hour before both sides pulled back, the void littered with wreckage. The Terran fleet, though battered, had inflicted unexpected losses. On the Resolute, the bridge was buzzing with quiet energy. 5 enemy ships destroyed, 3 more heavily damaged, Kara reported. We lost a Nomad and 2 drones, but overall, not bad for a warm-up, Vance said with a crooked smile. Riggs shook his head. Warm-up? You call that a warm-up? Relax, Chief, Vance said. The game's just starting. Volek stared at the fading hollow image of the Terran fleet. Prepare the next assault, he ordered. This time, I will not be amused by their theatrics. Sherelek hesitated. Do we adjust our strategy, Grand Strategist? Volek's eyes glowed like molten gold. No. They want to play games? Then we will crush their spirit by showing them the futility of defiance. Tomorrow, I bring the Imperial hammer down upon them. Vance watched the Imperial fleet regroup, the massive black shapes aligning once again into perfect formation. His smirk faded into a thoughtful expression. They're about to get serious, Kara said quietly. Yeah, Vance replied. And so are we. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the shifting hologram. Tomorrow we make them bleed. The twin suns rose over Epsilon Eridani, their pale glow scattering across the steel bodies of hundreds of ships. For a moment, the battlefield was quiet, a pause before the storm. On the Resolute, Captain Eric Vance leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the growing wall of red indicators filling the holosphere. Status, he asked. Imperial fleet in full advance, Kara Miles replied, her tone even but edged with tension. Over 300 ships on the lead vector. Heavier carriers are hanging back. They're coming with everything they've got, Riggs muttered from the engineering pit. And we're what? A wall of duct tape and good intentions. Don't forget the laughing, Vance said, flashing a quick grin. That's our secret weapon. The calm crackled with fleet chatter as Vance opened a channel to every ship. This is Captain Vance, Resolute. I'm not going to lie. This will hurt. The Empire wants us broken and silent. Instead, I want every Imperial ship to hear us. When they fire, laugh. When they miss, laugh harder. Let them know humanity doesn't crawl. A low chorus of agreement rippled through the comms. Kara glanced at him. You really think laughter is going to save us? No, he said, but it'll remind us who we are while we fight. The first wave hit like thunder. A wall of plasma fire from the Imperial vanguard slammed into the outer Terran line. Shields flared blue and white, sizzling under the impact. The Terran frigate Spearpoint erupted in a flash, its hull torn apart by a direct strike. Spearpoint's gone, an ensign shouted. Close the gap. Vance barked. Bring the Ironheart forward. Rail batteries. Fire at will. The Resolute's main cannons roared to life. Slugs screamed to the void, followed by guided missiles weaving through enemy fire like serpents. A Zathrian destroyer, caught in the barrage, exploded in a cascade of molten fragments. Target down. Kara called. On the Imperial judgment, Volek's gaze burned as he observed the skirmish. They're focusing fire intelligently, Sherelek said. Even with fewer ships, they're striking weak points. Volek's claws tightened on the railing. Primitive tools wielded by clever hands. But cleverness is fleeting. Order will crush chaos. Back in the thick of the battle, human ships darted through enemy formations like wasps, moving unpredictably. The Falcon Wing looped behind an Imperial cruiser, pounding it with a barrage of high-yield torpedoes. Falcon 2 reports critical hits on enemy cruiser Alpha 17. Kara shouted. Vance nodded, his eyes scanning the map, pushed them left, hurried them toward the debris field. The strategy was dangerous but effective. The Imperial spearhead and use the flexible tactics. Overcommit to the pursuit, drifting into the mine remains of old freighters and hidden Terran drones. Detonate charges on my mark, Vance ordered. 3, 2, 1, now. The void bloomed with explosions. A dozen Imperial ships were ripped apart as concealed charges detonated simultaneously. Riggs whooped. You should have seen that. Boom, boom, gone. Kara allowed herself a thin smile. Volek won't take that lightly. But the Empire retaliated swiftly. A wave of fighters swept across the Terran formation, unleashing precision plasma strikes. The frigate Nomad 2 was hit broadside, spinning out of control, before bursting into a ball of fire. They're targeting our lighter ships, Kara said, eyes flicking between screens. Then we hit back harder, Vance replied. Bring Defiance forward. Target their carriers. I want their fighters blind and scrambling. The Defiance, a hulking Terran battleship, roared to life, its forward cannons punching holes through the Imperial fighter bays. Explosions rippled across the enemy carrier's hull, scattering burning wreckage into the void. For an hour, the battle raged without pause. The void was alive with streaks of plasma, railgun tracers, and fire from missile trails. Each explosion painted the darkness with brief flashes of orange and white. Hulls screamed under the strain of impacts. Shields down to 40%. Riggs yelled, "If we take another direct hit." "Then we won't." Vance cut in. "Helm, vector 45 degrees. Bring us around their left flank. Kara, give me a firing solution on that cruiser with a glowing bow." "Solution locked," Kara said, fingers dancing over controls. "Fire." The Resolute's main railgun spat tungsten slugs. The first hit punched a hole in the cruiser's shields. The second tore through its bridge. The third detonated its reactor. The ship vanished in a silent inferno. On the Imperial flagship, Volok's expression shifted from disdained irritation. "Losses on the Vanguard are unacceptable," he said coldly. "This Captain Vance fights like a wild animal, unpredictable and reckless." Sherrilek hesitated. "Perhaps we should reconsider our formation." "No," Volok snapped. "We tighten the noose. Surround them. Grind them down with superior firepower." The noose began to close. From all sides, Imperial ships surged forward. Plasma fire rained on the Terran fleet, battering shields to critical levels. The Resolute shuddered as another blast tore across its starboard plating. Damage on decks 4 through 6. Riggs shouted, "Fire suppression engaged, but we got breaches." "Seal them and reroute power to forward shields," Vance said. "We hold the line." Kara's voice was calm but urgent. "We can't hold much longer like this." "Then we'll change the game," Vance said. His eyes locked on the tactical display. "Prep the gravity well projectors. Time for a slingshot." Minutes later, the Resolute executed its maneuver. Using the local gravity wells of nearby moons, the ship performed a hairpin turn impossible for larger Imperial cruisers to match. The sudden shift threw the enemy formation off balance. Human ships surged through the gap like wolves through a broken fence, tearing into the Imperial flank. "Look at them scatter." Riggs laughed. They didn't see that coming. The celebration was short-lived. A massive blast slammed into the Resolute, throwing crew members to the deck. Alarm screamed. The forward viewport flickered as the ship's shields collapsed. Direct hit from an Imperial dreadnought. Kara shouted, "We're exposed." Vance grabbed the railing, his knuckles white. "Get us out of their firing arc. Helm, roll us 90 degrees and give me full burn on the port engines." The Resolute groaned as it spun away from another volley, barely escaping destruction. By the battle's third hour, the Terran fleet was bloodied but not broken. Smoke and fire filled sections of the Resolute, but the crew kept fighting, their voices steady despite exhaustion. "Status of the fleet?" Vance demanded. 15 ships lost, 20 more damaged, Kara replied. "But the Empire's taken heavier losses than expected. We've hit 30 of theirs." "That'll sting," Vance said, though his face was grim. On the Imperial judgment, Volok glared at the battle map. "This is no longer amusing," he said coldly. "I want their flagship crushed. Bring the dreadnought line forward. End this." Vance saw the move coming. "They're coming for us," Kara said. "Good," Vance replied. "That means we got their attention." He straightened, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Prepare for the next strike. We're not done yet." The crew exchanged determined glances. Despite the smoke, the alarms, and the chaos, none of them looked humans do when cornered. Vance said, his grin returning. The Resolute limped through the debris field, her hull scarred and smoldering. The battle at Epsilon Eridani had paused for only a moment, both fleets retreating to regroup. The void was quiet now, but the silence felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Captain Eric Vance stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of the fleet's status. Red markers flashed across the display. Ships destroyed, heavily damaged, or out of commission. He counted the losses without looking away. 28 ships gone, Kara Miles reported, her voice low. 40 more need repairs. We're down to half our original firepower. Vance exhaled through his nose, his jaw tight. And the Empire? They've lost close to 50 ships, maybe more, Kara said. But they have reserves. We don't. Chief Riggs burst in, grease streaked across his uniform. Captain, if we don't take Resolute off the line for at least an hour, we're done. She's bleeding power from 3 decks, and the starboard railgun's fried. No hour, Vance said firmly. We won't get another chance to hit them like this. Riggs shook his head. You'll get the ship killed, sir. Then she dies fighting. Vance shot back. Same as the rest of us if we sit still. Volek's voice crackled across the Terran emergency frequencies, his tone dripping with contempt. Humans, your resistance is amusing, but meaningless. I have you surrounded. Surrender, and I may allow your species to live as servants of the Empire. Refuse, and Earth will burn within the day. The message repeated across every channel, echoing to the halls of the Resolute. Vance stared at the transmission with cold fury. He's threatening Earth now, he muttered. Sir, Kara said carefully, he's baiting you. Vance smiled grimly. Then let's take the bait and choke him with it. He gathered his officers around the table, the hologram of the Imperial fleet looming above them like a wall of knives. At the center floated the massive silhouette of the Imperial Judgment, Volek's flagship. 5 kilometers of armor perfection. That ship, Vance said, pointing. Cut off the head and the body flinches. Volek thinks we're too weak to strike back. He's wrong. Kara frowned. Even with all our ships, we couldn't break through that shield grid. Not directly. Not directly, Vance agreed. But we don't need to. We get close enough. We overload our own reactor, and we take that ship with us. The room fell silent. You're talking about suicide, Riggs said. No, Vance replied. I'm talking about survival. We lose this battle. Earth is gone. Every colony is gone. The only way we win is by hitting Volek. So hard the rest of his fleet hesitates. Kara's voice was quiet but steady. You'd sacrifice the Resolute? Vance met her gaze. I'd sacrifice myself if it means humanity gets to keep breathing. The plan was set in motion. Smaller Terran ships would create diversions, pulling Imperial forces apart. The Resolute, battered and limping, would make a run straight for the Imperial Judgment, using the chaos as cover. As the crew prepared, Vance found himself alone on the bridge for a moment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo, worn and faded. His younger sister, smiling under an Earth sky long gone from his memory. She died during the first Zathrian raids on Mars. He whispered, This one's for you, Cass. The Imperial fleet moved first. Enemy carriers are advancing. Kara reported as alarms blared across the Resolute's bridge. They're bringing the hammer down. Then we hit first. Vance said, Signal the fleet. Initiate Phase 1. The Terran ships scattered, weaving through the wreckage of the earlier battle like shadows. Fighters streaked past Imperial destroyers, dropping EMP torpedoes that flickered across their shields. The Ironheart charged headlong into the enemy line, guns blazing. Ironheart shields are failing, Kara warned. Keep them moving, Vance said. They know their job. On the Ironheart, Captain Malik's voice came through the comms, hoarse but unwavering. Tell Vance we'll hold this line. See you on the other side. Seconds later, the Ironheart plowed into an Imperial cruiser, detonating its reactor in a blinding explosion. The shock wave rippled through the void, clearing a path for the Resolute. Kara turned to Vance, her face pale. Malik just bought us a gap. Vance's jaw tightened. Then we use it. Full burn. Straight at Volek's heart. The Resolute roared forward, engine screaming. Imperial fire rained down, but the smaller Terran ships drew attention, darting between the dreadnoughts like hornets. Shields at 30%. Riggs shouted. Hold them steady, Vance said. His eyes were locked on the growing shape of the Imperial Judgment. We only get one shot. On Volek's flagship, alarms began to sound. Grand strategist, the human flagship is breaking through. Sherelek exclaimed. Volek's mandibles clicked. Then crush them. The Imperial dreadnoughts shifted to block the Resolute's path. Plasma fire streaked across the void, hammering the Terran ship. Port shields are gone. Kara yelled, Angle the hull. Vance barked. Give him the narrowest target possible. The Resolute twisted to barrage, armor glowing red-hot under the assault. A missile slammed into its side, sending sparks raining across the bridge. We're losing power on Deck 5. Riggs shouted. Rear out everything to engines and forward guns. Vance ordered. The Resolute punched through. The Imperial Judgment loomed ahead, a titan of steel and black glass. Distance, 10,000 kilometers in closing, Kara said. Load everything we got left, Vance said. Missiles, rail slugs, even the kitchen sink. The Resolute opened fire. Missiles screamed through space, slamming into the dreadnought shields. Railgun slugs cracked against the shimmering barrier, leaving ripples of energy in their wake. Shields holding, Kara said, frustration edging her voice. Then we hit harder, Vance growled. Volek's eyes narrowed as he watched the human flagship hurtle toward him like a wounded predator refusing to die. They mean to ram us, Sherelek realized. Fools, Volek hissed. Let them try. Prepare for impact. Captain, Kara said, her voice barely above a whisper. If we do this, we won't survive? Vance looked at her, his expression calm. If we don't, no one does. For a moment, silence filled the bridge, broken only by the hum of the failing systems. Ready the reactor, he said quietly. We're going to turn it into a weapon. As the crew prepared for the final run, Vance's voice came over the comms, clear and unshaken. To every ship still fighting, hold them off just a little longer. We're going for Volek's throat. If we fall, make sure they hear us laugh. The crew of the Resolute answered with a single word, shouted in unison, Aye. The ship burned forward, engines flaring like twin stars. Ahead, the Imperial Judgment waited, unaware of just how much humans were willing to sacrifice. The Resolute tore through the void like a wounded predator, fire trailing from her hull. The Imperial Judgment loomed ahead, an unbroken fortress of black steel and shimmering energy fields. Every kilometer, close felt like a miracle. Distance, 5,000 kilometers. Kara Miles shouted over the alarms. Shields gone. Hull integrity at 20%. Keep us steady, Captain Eric Vance said, gripping the railing. His knuckles were white, but his voice was calm. If we drift even a degree off course, we're dust. Reactors primed. Chief Riggs reported from below. We push her any harder, she's going to blow whether you want her to or not. Then we time it right, Vance said. On the Imperial Judgment, Volek stood in silence, watching the human flagship bear down on his position. They mean to ram us, Admiral Sherelek said, her voice tight. Volek's amber eyes narrowed. No, they're trying to die loudly to make a spectacle. Open every gun. Shred them. The sky lit up with plasma fire. Beams of white heat tore into the Resolute's hull. Deck plating melted. Entire corridors depressurized. But still, the ship kept coming. Deck 8's gone. Riggs roared. We're bleeding air everywhere. Seal it off, Vance said. All non-essential crew to the escape pods. That's an order. Kara spun to face him. You're staying? He met her gaze with a hard smile. Someone's got to drive this thing into Volek's teeth. That someone's me. The crew hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then Kara's jaw tightened. Aye, Captain. She turned to the comms. All hands, evacuate. Now! The bridge emptied in a rush of motion, but Kara remained by his side. You didn't leave when Mars burned, she said quietly. I'm not leaving now. Vance's grin softened into something almost sad. Stubborn to the end, huh? Guess I learned from the best. 3,000 kilometers. The Resolute plowed through Imperial defenses, railguns pounding at the dreadnought shields. Each impact left ripples across the energy barrier, but it wasn't enough. Those shields won't break before we hit them, Kara said. Then we don't break them, Vance replied. We go through them. Volek's mandibles twitched as he watched the Terran ship refuse to die. Increase power to the front shields. I want that vessel erased before it reaches us. Sherelek hesitated. Strategist their trajectory. Silence. Volek roared. Do as I command. Back on the Resolute, Vance keyed the comms to the remaining Terran fleet. This is it, he said, his voice clear despite the chaos. If we don't take Valak down, the system falls. You hold that line. Make sure Earth remembers we didn't die quietly. Understood, Resolute. Came the reply from the Defiance. We'll keep them busy. 2,000 kilometers. The Resolute's engine screamed as rigs fed everything into the forward burn. The ship bucked under the stress, but the path to the Imperial judgment was clear. Prepare overload the reactor, Vance ordered. We'll detonate it the second we breach their shields. Riggs' voice came over the comm. Reactor's unstable already. You're riding a live nuke, Captain. Good, Vance said. Let's aim it well. Valak's bridge vibrated under the impact of the Terran barrage. Shields down to 70%. A Zathrian officer called. Valak's eyes flared with fury. How is this possible? They're focusing fire on a single point, Sherrilek said. It's surgical. Then kill them now. Valak hissed. 1,000 kilometers. The Resolute's hull glowed red-hot. Metal plates warped and tore away, exposing the skeletal frame beneath. Inside, sparks rained from the consoles. Kara gripped the railing beside Vance. You know this is insane, right? Yeah, Vance said, smiling despite the smoke. That's why it'll work. The final volley from the Resolute struck the exact same spot on the Dreadnought's shield. The barrier flared, strained, and then, shields failing. Kara yelled, Now! Vance roared, Riggs, blow it. The reactor surged, flooding the ship with a blinding white light. On the Imperial judgment, Valak's eyes widened. What are they? The Resolute hit the shield like a thunderclap, the reactor detonating in the same instant. The explosion tore through the energy barrier and slammed into the Dreadnought's armored bow. The void erupted in a flash brighter than the sun's. When the light faded, half the Imperial judgment's forward hull was gone, its once perfect structure shattered and burning. The bridge was chaos. Fires, alarms, crew scrambling for control. Valak stood amidst the wreckage, his golden armor scorched. How? How did they? His voice trailed off into disbelief. Back among the Terran fleet, Kara coughed as smoke filled the emergency pod. She had been forced off the Resolute moments before the final strike, dragged by Riggs into an escape shuttle. Through the viewport, she watched the explosion ripple across Valak's flagship. He did it. Riggs said, voice raw. Kara clenched her fists. He did more than that. He reminded them who we are. Valak staggered to his feet, his pride bleeding as much as his ship. Grand strategist, Sherrilek said, her voice trembling. Our forces are in disarray. The humans are pressing the attack. We've lost the advantage. Valak stared at the wreckage of the human flagship. Anger etched across his face. One ship, one human ship did this. The surviving Terran fleet surged forward, their morale ignited by the Resolute's sacrifice. The Defiance, leading the charge, hammered the Imperial lines with relentless fire, pushed them back. Kara's voice came over the comm, cold and steady. For Captain Vance, for Earth. The battle turned. Without Valak's unshaken control, the Imperial fleet faltered. Their perfect formations dissolved under ferocity of human attacks. Ship after ship fell to railgun fire and missile swarms. Valak's pride cracked as alarms screamed around him. Retreat, he ordered finally, the word tasting like ash. Pull the fleet back. We will return, but not today. The remnants of the Empire's forces slipped into warp, vanishing into the void. When the silence returned, Kara's escape pod drifted among the wreckage of friend and foe alike. She stared at the blackened remains of the Resolute, now just a twisted monument to defiance. Riggs sat beside her, silent. Kara whispered. He said we'd make them remember our laughter. Riggs gave a rough chuckle. Yeah, bet Valak won't forget it. Hours later, as the battered Terran fleet regrouped, Kara sent the final message to Earth. Victory at Epsilon Eridani. The Resolute and Captain Vance have fallen, but the Empire is broken. Humanity stands. She paused, her voice softer now. He said we were stubborn, insane, and impossible to predict. He was right, and that's why we're still here, far from the battlefield, Aboard the retreating Imperial Judgment, Volek sat in silence, staring at the stars. The image of the human ship diving into his dreadnought burned in his mind. These creatures, he murmured, are not prey. They are something else. And for the first time in his long career, Koro T.H. Volek felt something he had never known before: doubt. Kara stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now serving as a temporary flagship. She gazed at the void where the Resolute had fallen, the faintest smile touching her lips. "Rest easy, Captain," she whispered. "We'll carry it from here." The fleet turned toward the stars, engines igniting, ready to bring the fight wherever the Empire dared show its face.